your blood?
I haven't made up my mind yet. Thank you very much. It's not an easy one for me to decide. The mic's not on yet right now. These are the only people that I have a personal gripe with, but I will maintain.
And do we have CART still? CART transcript for Commissioner Kesmia Dodge?
Yes, it should be, but it didn't start. Let me go out there to make sure that.
Like the old days, right?
So I guess we'll do 3A, B, C, D just informally. And hopefully by the time when those are in progress, we'll hit quorum and then we'll play it by ear. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Magic touch there.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right, folks, I'm going to get it started. Thanks, everybody. Welcome. This is the unofficial, I guess, June meeting of the Disabilities Commission for the City of Santa Monica. I'm just going to get started. We'll do some agenda management. We'll just jump into items 3A informally, and if we hit a quorum while they're going, we'll go from there. But I'm not going to do roll call or anything like that. I just want to get it going, and hopefully we hit a quorum very soon. So I'm going to jump right to 3A, special agenda items, introduction of Eileen Reynolds, Director of Housing and Human Services. Thank you for being here.
Is this on? Oh yeah, great. Hi everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Aileen Reynolds. I'm the new Director of Housing and Human Services here with the city. I started back in January, so sorry it took me a minute to get to you, but thrilled to be here. Just wanted to introduce myself to you, tell you a little bit about my background and what we're working on in the department, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have questions or priorities you want to make sure that I'm aware of from the commission standpoint. So I previously am from New York. I just moved here. I worked for the New York City Department of Housing Preservation Development. I have over a decade-long career in the affordable housing and public sector industry, addressing how folks access affordable housing, mostly through equitable policies, making sure that, there's no secret way to get into affordable housing and that our public resources are made available in a way that's equitable and accessible and transparent. That's mostly my background, but I started in the nonprofit industry and worked on the ground in housing developments and got to know people directly, and that work really informs my perspective now, knowing individuals who benefited from some of these programs and thinking about that when I'm coming in from a policy perspective now. So was thrilled to see, personally, my family was looking to relocate to California. So when I was job searching, I was thrilled to see this opportunity available to work for the city of Santa Monica. It's really a great blend of my previous experience in affordable housing and homelessness intervention, while also allowing me to have a broadened scope in a smaller city where I can have our human services work, where we work with nonprofits and work on our social safety net and have more direct access to community members. And it's just been really awesome to see how engaged Santa Monicans are and how you all are really invested in the work. So really thrilled to be here. With me starting, there was a lot of work already in action here in Santa Monica. The realignment plan was already underway. The homelessness strategic plan, the aging and disability plan were all authored. So, it was in some ways easy for me to come in and already have some work laid out to me that are priorities for the department. And so that's where a lot of our focus has been. But I've also been, thinking about how else we can make our work more efficient and more equitable. So those are some of the things that I'm still looking at. I would say I'm still in the listening and learning phase, although there's obviously work to be done immediately. Since I'm new here, I want to make sure I take my time and be thoughtful about how we do work. But some of the priorities that the department's working on right now, building out our homelessness prevention and intervention work. We're really rethinking how we address street homelessness here in Santa Monica, how to increase the likelihood that individuals experiencing street homelessness will come indoors and accept services and ultimately lead to permanent housing. Thinking about what those wraparound services look and making sure that they're designed in a way that are most effective. Also thinking about more creative ways to create affordable housing here in Santa Monica. As you may know, affordable housing is an extremely expensive industry. And so thinking about more creative and sustainable ways to create affordable housing through different models such as social housing or as of right housing through the various programming that, models that exist nationally that we could explore here in Santa Monica. And then we have our upcoming Human Services Grant Program that will be launching its next RFP next year, which is a 4-year cycle of how we fund a variety of nonprofit agencies in their work in providing for Santa Monica's social safety net, thinking about how to boost that program, support it, support our organizations and partners that are really hurting right now through changes at the federal level, and try and fill some gaps and really meet the community where they are and address the most important needs with our limited resources. So that's all I'll say for now. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I just really wanted to say hello and introduce myself. So thanks for serving on this commission.
Thank you so much for being here and just starting. We're not starting on the best foot. We're usually always here, but this is going to be a long relationship between your office and this commission. But I have some questions, but I want to open it up to my commissioners to.
You can start.
All right, I'll start. So I'm the chair. I've worked for OPCC doing outreach, direct service for people experience homelessness. You're also coming in and not only a lot of stuff happening at the federal level, but the state level. Mm-hmm. July 1st, the Behavioral Health Services Act completely goes into play, which changes the funding for mental health, including there's a housing component. So how do we leverage those funds? But actually, there's a big decision happening over the next 2 weeks with the budget. So just some issues I'll relay that I've heard over, this is going on my 8th year, 3rd term as the chair. So the Medicaid asset limit, that's very concerning. If it goes back to $3,000, it was already a concern that it went from no limit down to over 100K. Mm-hmm. If it goes to 3,000, that's going to be an issue. Obviously, HR1 recertification for CalFresh already is happening. Concern about people who are eligible losing that. That includes people with SSI and lots of the people we serve in Santa Monica. And then starting next year, the new requirements for Medicaid. So making sure no one who's eligible for Medicaid is not receiving Medicaid, and also in-house IHSS services. That's a major concern I've heard. So just wanted to relay those that, we're not in a vacuum. If there's federal, state stuff that's going to have a major impact. So what locally, some of the things you brought up in your introduction, I think are a good start, but there's some issues in the near term. And just something we've talked about as a commission for years is digital accessibility. So when you talk about equitable access to information, making sure your files, your PDF files, they work with assistive technologies. Your website things are searchable and findable. There's definitely some room for improvement there. When people put in a particular search term that makes sense to them as a person with a disability, they find a helpful resource. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some search engine optimization. And then we talked a lot about AI as just, again, that's something that particularly affects our community, and what can we do to make it improve the positives and reduce the negatives. That's we could take hours talking about that, but part of that also is how people with disabilities use AI, that they find what they want. When they put in a query to a large language model, it doesn't link them to the right thing. And it doesn't do as well with people with disabilities. So again, just the Medicaid benefits, digital accessibility, AI have been huge. There's other things, but that's kind of, I just want to give you the kind of the macro things that we've been talking about, and then I'll pass it on.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly add, I think one is that obviously we have state and federal advocacy work that we do here in the city, and we have staff here that work on legislative advocacy and partners and consultants. So I think in ways that we can collaborate and, sharing comments, public comment, and work with our lobbyists, absolutely open to that. And then I think something I'm interested in, I've always been interested in, is to the extent that the city is resourced to do so, creating programs with limited or like low entry programs that don't have all the strings attached that some of our federal programs have. Where can we fill those gaps? Like you said, if Medicaid or CalFresh or, all these programs are making it harder to qualify, how can we fill the gap of the folks that are falling out? So I think those are the types of things. Obviously, we want to start with hoping that the programs don't change and working to advocate for that. But in the event that they do, how can we respond to that locally with local resources? So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
So you mentioned the report on age and disabilities. What was your takeaway in terms of those who have a chronic disability, and how does that affect your priorities?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think one of the, and Alana's here, and we'll talk a little bit about some work here too in our department on that. But I think one of the things that were of interest to me as a city employee were the importance of collaboration within the city and in our infrastructure and addressing some of the needs of people with disabilities. So the fact that we're having stakeholder meetings with members of public works and mobility and transportation, and having folks in the room to talk about how to integrate this work and all that we do, to me, is a good step forward, because people with disabilities receive services and need to integrate in our society and our community as anyone else does. And so we need to be thinking about that voice and that perspective in all of our work. And I appreciate that we're in that direction, or moving in that direction, and not siloing, the work into only one department that, addresses vulnerable communities, right? So that's been, I think, my immediate positive take, is seeing that collaboration. As I said, I'm still digesting a lot of stuff here, so I appreciate if there's anything else you want to call out to me to look into, but that was my gut reaction.
I don't know if I have something
no pressure.
Directly to call out to. I mean, my the world I work in, my son has cerebral palsy, he's 22, and my wife and I have a business in Santa Monica that is like a community activity center for young adults, and as they transition out of school, there's housing, there's other components that are important. I don't know. I sit here because I care about that particular that group I'm deeply involved with, and I don't know what that means. It's just, it would be nice as you settle in to put that together. There's a lot of great things happening. Park and Recs may change. There's a lot of great things. It's just how it all integrates.
Yeah.
And then how it gets communicated to the community. You have both those with parents with those with disabilities are very busy.
Yep.
And it's hard for them to get, they get a lot from school, the regional center, but they don't know necessarily what's going on with the city. And then you can combine that with those who might be socioeconomically disadvantaged in that, so they're not, or speak Spanish or some other language, they're not getting the information. So it's really key to get that information out to the community. I mean, I know you know this,
I appreciate
but
it.
But it does go back to the website as something that is shocking to us. And you're not in charge of it, but you can influence that. You put in keywords, nothing comes up. They don't, One of the commissioners over here was like, how do you get the beach wheelchair? These things are hard to find.
Yeah.
And there are good examples out there of other cities, and perhaps New York had a great system where they can put the information together. Again, not totally, it's all your departments, but having access to information is going to be really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Royale?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I have question about what is your proactive approach, if any, to ensuring developers don't just meet minimum compliance on paper, but build fully accessible, livable spaces?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I will say that there is a level of planning and building code that's outside of my scope that I can't comment on. But, as I assume you're aware, based on what you're saying, there's federal requirements on 5% and 2% mobility and visual hearing units. And then there are reasonable accommodation requirements, right? So even for folks who move into an apartment that is not an accessible apartment, they are required to make modifications for someone who has a reasonable accommodation for that unit. I think something that I've seen is more and more new construction is being created where there's an official term for it, but essentially every unit is able to be converted into an accessible unit. It's a design decision where the threshold between what an accessible unit is and what a regular quote unquote unit is not very big. So if someone has an accommodation request, it can easily be accommodated, and it avoids the concerns about cost and things like that. So I think, something my team can work on is, prioritizing that type of design in our affordable housing. In terms of adding more requirements on, should we build more than 5% for people with mobility disabilities? Should we build more than 2% of each of our developments? I think I would want to look at what our below market housing wait list looks like in terms of people who are requesting that service, because we don't want to create units for a non-existent need. But then there are also, of course, people with disabilities that don't fit into those need categories and still may need modifications to their units. So I think it's more about the design being amenable to easy changes. But again, of course, open to any other feedback you may have, but that's top of mind for me.
Okay, thank you. And second question is about, you mentioned grants programs for programs. As I informed, Santa Monica agencies received portions of those grants for many years. Are you will be able to measure some effectiveness of those programs and based on that effectiveness distribute those grants, or you just kind of will follow the previous pattern and just kind of distributing to whoever in the list?
Yeah, no, so our Human Services Grant Program works on a 4-year cycle. So if someone is granted and awarded through our Human Services Grant Program, they get that award for 4 years, but we do performance monitoring throughout that cycle, including an external audit party to make sure that the financial contribution is being used to its purpose. And we do reserve the right, of course, to, end a contract early if they're not meeting our standards. That being said, every 4-year cycle is a new one. There's no obligation or requirement or expectation that someone that was awarded a grant this past cycle will once again receive it in the next cycle. And part of that is because we want to be responsive to what the community needs are. And it's possible that 4 years ago, a certain type of service was really needed, and now things have changed. And so we don't necessarily want to prioritize funding that type of program when maybe something else has come up. So it's a brand new process. And we do some community engagement around how to inform those priorities. And actually, I can let you all know we're doing a session in Virginia Avenue Park. Is it next week, I think? So we can make sure you guys have the information in case Tuesday you want to attend. But yeah, so it's new. It's based on priorities of the community, and there's not a guarantee that previous grantees will be awarded.
How do you like so far your position?
I love it. I'm having fun. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Everyone's so great here. Yeah.
You enjoy the
Thank you.
community and your new position.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kazmia Dodge?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Are you responsible for Section 8 housing also?
Yes, yes.
Well, specifically, I would like to know if there's an avenue to find out, like the Housing Commission and Legal Aid has not responded to an illegal rent increase that I have. And the Housing Commission basically sent me back a letter saying they weren't going to deal with it. So where do I go from there?
Yeah, I can contact you after this with a direct contact so we can work on your case offline.
Okay, and I had a question about the housing, and I wanted to expand, if it were possible, not just all that we need to get accessible housing, but the actual housing units. I don't know if it's an introducible idea, I'll be quick, but I would like to just have some kind of the new buildings that they take into account that part of the way to save money and improve the environment is to have little garden spaces in every or in a certain number of apartments with every building so that the people can also get their own food right there and it's cheaper and all that. So I'd like to know if that's if that's under your venue, under your canopy, or if that's somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So affordable housing development is in my department, and we do have affordable housing developments that have community gardens or gardens for residents to work in. I actually toured a building recently on 14th that has that for the residents. So it's something that we welcome and encourage when we receive proposals for affordable housing. And I'm open to exploring other ways to encourage that type of engagement for residents. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Adiemi, then Mead, then Rockfeld. Adiemi?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Aden Reynolds. Welcome to Santa Monica Housing.
Thank you.
I hope you like it. We like it. I think about 2 years ago, and I ran into this paper just yesterday, and I thought I should always have it with me. It's part of the work that we did with Elena and Elizabeth. Welcome back. About 2 years ago, I was privileged to be part of that study. It's an exhaustive survey that we had. And among other things, housing, the question was asked, reason to consider moving from Santa Monica. Housing cost, 48%. Cost of living, 39%. Need for more care and support, 38%. Exterior barriers, 22%. And the list goes on into other reasons, social participation, transportation, outdoor spaces and building. It goes on. Mm-hmm. But to stick with this issue of housing, and of course this survey can help you as a template as you go on into your new role. With the percentages remaining it looks like things are looking good because 48% for reason for moving, which is almost 0.5% to 100, the cost of living and the need for more care and support. How do you plan to bridge this remaining gap so that, you cannot achieve 100% in anything. It's humanly impossible. But how do you plan to bridge these the gaps that I've just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the approach to housing instability and housing security is multifaceted, right? Because as you just listed, there are many different reasons why someone may be housing insecure. And so we have to have an approach that can address the variety of concerns folks have. Alana is going to present our new renter aid program we're launching. That is one of the many ways we're looking to address people who are in immediate financial distress, that we can assist with financial assistance to help them stabilize in their housing. That's great for folks who normally can afford their rent but are in a bad spot, right? Then there's the folks who are in housing they can't afford and need to move. And that's where our creation of more affordable housing or the preservation of the existing affordable housing is critical, and making sure that there's mobility options within the community for people to stay, but be able to have a more affordable rent. That's also why all of our affordable housing has income restrictions. So we make sure that the housing is going to someone who qualifies and needs it based on their income. And we have a variety of housing options, from extremely low income to moderate income. So to address all those different areas, but it's a big job. It's a national crisis. The housing crisis is a national crisis, but we're looking to do our best here in Santa Monica, and yeah, a lot of different strategies.
Thank you for your response. I think there was a push forward. I don't know whether because it was an election year last week. And I ran into, okay, another paper that I have here, because whenever we finish from here, I take my paper home. I try to go over it and see what can be improved in what we couldn't cover in 2 hours here. And I found that this study here dated August 22nd, 23. That's almost 3 years ago.
Yep.
During which the city council approved directing the city manager and the city attorney to implement and develop recommendations for programs and ordinances to protect the 70% of Santa Monicans who are renters amidst record evictions. This is 2023. Yes, 2023. And then last month, May, I had this city council approve $6 million
Yep.
aid program to combat evictions and homelessness. So it's like a study, 2023, and 2026 approval of $6 million. So to me, it looks like a promise made, promise kept. And that really warms my heart.
I appreciate that.
The reason we're here is results. We can spend endless hours here. But if we don't have results in anything, we're not helping people. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you for being generous with your time. I have one comment and then a comment. Are you good on time?
Yeah.
Okay. My background, I'm a social worker, MSW, and an ADAC. I'm a certified ADA coordinator. I was a psychiatric social worker, and I've been an ADA coordinator for the Department of Mental Health. And then on the other side, I focus on data, outcome measures, evidence-based practices. So just one point that I have to, just how ubiquitous disability is, it's 1 in 4. It is 1 in 4 adults in Santa Monica. And I only have to get on my soapbox about this because I worked on the Santa Monica aging plan. I worked on LA County's aging plan. I've been a subject matter expert at the state level. We always undercount people with disability, and this was direct feedback I gave to the consultant. The census is not a count of people with disabilities. It's a count of if you have one or more 6 functional limitations. There's more than 6 functional limitations. It doesn't include communication disabilities. I could go on and on with, like, I've worked with John Hopkins on this about why it's an undercount, but I don't want to see at another city council meeting or in one of your reports that your proxy for how many people have a disability in Santa Monica is the census. That's not accurate. It's approximately 1 in 4 adults, 1 in 5 kids, period. So that's the proxy. So I just want to make sure we're not being undercounted, because when you're allocating funds and you think it's 9% or 10%, whatever the census of is, we're already off by half. Like,
Yeah.
that's the meat and potatoes. If you're already counting us in half, we're in trouble. And I saw that during our plan. So when you look at that, just know that number it's the census is an undercount, period.
Thank
I could go on and on about data, but the census is my big, it's 1 in 4 adults, 1 in 5 kids. And as you get older, more of the population is disabled. So I just want to make sure as we're planning, we're that big. It's that ubiquitous in Santa Monica. And then I'll pass it to Commissioner Rockfeld.
2 points on the grant program every 4 years. What would be the approximate yearly outlay of that program?
In funding.
Funding, correct.
So it's $10 million over 4 years is what we've historically done.
And how many organizations are typically participating in this group, in this
Around
funding?
20.
20. What would be the smallest Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you're going to get tested.
I'm checking my team.
So, my question boils down to: do you have a category for groups that are $3,000 to $5,000 instead of going for the larger ones that's out there? I don't know if you address. There's a lot of small, not the $500 grant start something. No, there's established nonprofits that actually provide a service within Santa Monica that are not asking to hire people. They're asking to help support what we're doing to a specific niche of this community.
Yeah, so historically, we haven't had, this last cycle, we didn't have like a minimum requirement. I do think it's something to consider, but your feedback is appreciated because we have some grants that are $100,000 and some that are over $1 million, So
Right, and the reason is like 5 years ago when we first started a nonprofit, someone said, "Hey, apply for that." And
Yeah.
before I was here, I did. That's fine. It was a great learning thing, but it wasn't in my particular example that someone was looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, hey, we serve a community. We do something in Santa Monica. $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 is actually going to enable not hiring people, but direct programs. So that's a pretty strong suggestion on my part. When I saw the companies that got it, all well deserving, but there are others out there that don't cost a lot and you can get great benefit from. So, and number 2 is one of the areas that just sort of put in your mind, of all planning commission, everything like this, but we have parents who want to develop some sort of cooperative with their kids when they're in their 20s and group homes, for lack of a better word. When you start, at least my basic research, you start looking into bringing multiple people under one group, it falls under a lot of regulations, and I think that discourages. And this is direct from, and I normally don't talk about my own situation. We have a house. We don't want to live there. It's a big house. We would love to have multiple people come into the house and have a caregiver and provide, something for 3 or 4 people. But I looked at that, and I'm like, that falls under these specific regulations. Trying to do something good,
yeah.
but it kind of falls through the cracks. So if you can maybe just start thinking whether there's some simpler way so that we can help those. Otherwise, they're going to go into state support. It's going to cost more money. Parents are willing to do it.
Yeah.
They need the support and the lack of red tape to make it happen.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else in the queue. No, you're not. Press it again. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. A little background. Last meeting we had ADA specialist, and we kind of like prepare for him to answer lots of questions regarding people with disability, service, housing, etc., etc. So he done pretty good job to answer those questions. But when there is like area when a person should know FHA or HUD latest update and policy, that's the gray area where that like that specialist, he's specifically ADA specialist. So those area kind of like not really familiar probably. So do you plan by any chance to have a person who will be fluent on those law regulation policies, updates, and who will be able to consulting some people with disability within city, landlords, etc., etc. So because it's kind of like hard to find where to go if the disabled person, for example, had problem to be approved for reasonable accommodation. So it's a lot of challenges. And for example, for right now, the option are Legal Aid Foundation, which is dealing mostly with eviction, not really kind of like small accommodation person needed and denied. So City Attorney Office, which is like, it's like long waiting list to be even like considered. So there is like no option for a person to have proper consultation and probably help. So do you plan to kind of like do some sort of like changes?
Yeah, and the ADA coordinator you met with was internals of the city, right? From CDC? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so, and Alex, maybe you can check me on this, but there's like a formality in the role of being the ADA coordinator with the city that, you know, has a definition of what that is. But that doesn't limit, obviously, the expertise within my own department to understand, as you said, federal regulations and laws and making themselves available to assist. There's also a level of, you know, legal rules and obligations that only an attorney can enforce. And so I think what you're asking for, which I think is a reasonable ask, is something in the middle, right? Something between the ADA coordinator and an attorney to assist with someone who's maybe navigating tension with their landlord and just needs to like move through the process and be able to get the accommodation they need without escalating it to an attorney level. And that's absolutely something that my team can work to provide. I personally don't think that I would suggest an individual person who's the expert. I would expect my team, all my team, to be the expert, right? That's relevant to our work when I'm talking about, you know, housing and the housing authority. So I'll take that back, and I appreciate that because, you know, we need to be able to assist folks before escalating it.
If you will be able to provide some sort of like phone number or person name, like people can call and just ask basic questions without escalating that to like next level.
Right.
So it will be like very helpful.
Yeah.
Because there is like a lot of challenges for people with disability, and sometimes landlord just like ignored. Or,
Yeah, and you want to make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
One more, Catherine?
I just wanted to comment on Commissioner Rakefeld's proposal to ease the regulations for having housing for teens, and I thought, what a wonderful idea for seniors and old people and disabled people, you know, that have housing, and to make the regulations easier and to be able to have people in the same house that have different caregivers and things like that. I mean, it's a great idea, and definitely I support that. That's all.
Thanks.
All right. I just want to say thank you. Nice to meet you. We'll remain in touch and look forward to having you back. And just thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it moving to item 3B, presentation and discussion with Alana Remerman, Senior Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Analyst. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. Is this my presentation? I don't think so. While Agnieszka is pulling that up, my name is Alana Remerman. I'm in the Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Division in the Housing and Human Services Department. I've been here a few times. Nice to see you all again. And I'm here tonight to speak with you about the Santa Monica Renter Aid Program, which I'm sure you all have heard about. It went to council a couple weeks ago. And we're getting the presentation up now. Screen modified, is that? Okay. So in March 2025, City Council, well, that should actually be March 2023. Sorry, that was, oh no, that's right, March 2025. Council approved the Renter Protections Program, which included two programs. One is our Right to Counsel program, and the other was a flexible financial assistance program to prevent homelessness and keep Santa Monica households who are at risk of homelessness, keeping them housed. I'm here to speak specifically about the Flexible Financial Assistance Program, which we're now calling Santa Monica Renter Aid. So that's going to be the name of the program for community members. This program is designed to provide upstream homelessness prevention assistance to renters experiencing a housing crisis. The program will serve approximately 150 households annually. The services that will be provided include flexible financial assistance based on household needs and housing-focused case management, including linkages to programs within Santa Monica and the region, and specifically our Right to Counsel program, which is being operated by the Legal Aid Foundation of LA. It's open to Santa Monica renter households up to 120% of the area median income, and there's a priority for households at the greatest risk of homelessness, and additionally, a prioritization for people with disabilities, older adults, and families with minor children. The program is being funded by Measure GS. It's a $6 million budget over 5 years. We held a competitive request for proposal process, and the people concerned was selected as the operator. They scored the highest. A couple weeks ago, that contract went to council and it was approved, so we're moving forward with the contract routing process. The program is going to be launching this summer within the next month or so. And we're really starting to think now about outreaching around the program. There's going to be a robust community engagement process to let people know that the program is accepting applications. There's going to be an online application on our city website and paper applications as well for folks who don't have computer access. We're going to be having in-person office hours at Virginia Avenue Park and other city sites. It's looking like the main library is going to be another site. And we're also going to be promoting in a broad range of ways, but including Seascape, our digital kiosks, Big Blue Bus, and then just grassroots as well, grassroots promotion. And we're coming to you all today as we're moving into implementing the program and outreaching to the community. We really wanted to get your feedback around how we should be organizing our outreach strategies and how can we make sure that the application process is accessible as possible. So a couple of questions here. What do we need to be thinking about to ensure that outreach and application process are accessible to people with disabilities?
And what organizations should we be partnering with and promoting the Renter Aid program? And I'm also happy to take, other questions and feedback, but those are some of the specific questions we had for you tonight. So short and sweet, I'll hand it over to you all to see what your feedback is and if you have questions.
Thank you so much for being back. We appreciate you coming back with updates and following up on items that come up in previous meetings. That's very important to us. I have questions, but I'm going to pass it to Rockfelt and then IDME. Vice Chair.
You had mentioned prioritization for older individuals and disabilities. The document says prioritization for households at greater risk of homelessness. Is that another way? Is there a formal process? Is there a tiered step?
So there are multiple, generally the program is designed to, the broad eligibility is folks who are at risk of homelessness or having a housing crisis. So that's kind of the overarching prioritization. So somebody who perhaps is concerned about being able to pay rent because they're paying 80% of their income on rent, but they're still paying rent. Somebody who maybe has already fallen behind rent is going to be prioritized over somebody who's current on rent. But then underneath that, we're also looking at subpopulation priorities. So that's where people with disabilities, older adults, and families with minor children come in. So it's a little bit, we're actually using a tool developed by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for their homelessness prevention programs, which has different weighting for different factors, essentially. But we'll be transitioning to a tool that's going to be used on a regional level, because there are actually renter aid programs that are being launched all over Los Angeles County. So we want to be aligned with those programs.
Can you go through sort of how the process works operationally from someone who either you're reaching out to or they know they reach out to you?
Yeah, so the the program will launch sometime, we're thinking in July. So there'll be a portal where people can submit applications. There'll be a certain period of time that the application is open. And so folks can submit applications either via the application portal, or if they need help with completing the application, they can come to the office hours, or they can submit the paper application. And then we'll have basically a list of people who have submitted the applications, and they'll kind of show where they are in terms of these priority categories. So people who have eviction notices, who are behind on rent, people with disabilities, older adults are going to be higher up on the list than others. And really we will have to kind of see what we get in this first application period. This is going to be an ongoing program, I should mention. So this is being funded by Measure GS, which is an ongoing funding source. So this will be a program that will be integrated into our services network here. So I think as it becomes a program that's people are used to having access to, the demand will probably fluctuate. But we're expecting a really large amount of applications in this first application window because it's a new program. And it is, expected to serve about 150 households a year. So it's not going to meet the entire need. And that's where we are going to rely on our other agencies like the Human Services Grants Program, the Right to Counsel Program, to help meet needs that fall outside of the program. And to answer your question about how does that look, the folks that are prioritized would be contacted by the people concerned, and then they would get connected to a case manager who would go through kind of an intake process, and then would issue flexible financial assistance based on whatever's going on in their particular situation. So if it's back rent or utility arrears, or maybe they need help with something around employment, like paying for training or something. So it's very flexible assistance, but it just has to be tied kind of to housing stability.
With So going back, you have a portal. So one of the first things, obviously, let's make it accessible.
Yeah.
Let's make it all the basics. So it's not a hurdle to someone who might be blind or some other challenge to complete it.
Yes. The application portal would be held to the same standards in terms of digital accessibility as like our city website. I don't know the details of like if someone's blind, how that works for going into websites, but I can look into that. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I can definitely ensure that that's incorporated.
I got a few thoughts. So again, just with digital accessibility. So I think the city's doing really well on like automatic fixes. Like you could think of it like a spell checker for accessibility. You run your website through it, you run your document. You guys are using the right
Yes.
software. Where you guys have a gap is there's also a requirement for manual testing. So you use a screen reader, NVDA, there's common ones, and all government entities have a list of like the common ones, narrator on Windows, and you run it through and there's like scripts you can do. That's kind of another level. But then at some point you also need like real people with disabilities to test it. And I wish I would have thought of this with our last speaker, but like the city needs to hire someone who does this professionally. Like this is other entities, the city of LA, Pasadena, because I was an ADA coordinator, I met with these folks monthly. They're doing it, and you know we're in Silicon Valley, so I think we should be ahead of this. And I say this, it would be financially smart because if you can't do this in-house, you're going to have to contract out to your master agreements. It's going to be expensive if you're paying by the PDF, by the manual tester. You got to go with this agency. If you had someone just on demand in-house, it would pay for itself multiple fold. That's maybe bigger than this. But in the meantime, just run your scanners. There's manual accessibility testing scripts that I'll call them a layman can do. Someone who doesn't have a disability, someone who is not blind that can use a screen reader and test some stuff. So that's kind of what you can do without this resource. And just a few thoughts on organizations. We had Cal Able here, which is an account where you can store money away that doesn't account towards your asset limit, because I'm very concerned if it goes down to $3,000 and people are not aware of it, because once they get this money, that you have to be able to save some money for a rainy day. This is an asset that the disability community I'd love to take more advantage of. And when I worked for people concerned when they were OPCC, that was an issue, is folks would they'd apply for SSI, they'd get it, and then they'd have to spend it down because they didn't have anywhere to put it. Now they're month to month again, and they're the folks that are going to be eligible for this program. So we need long-term a way to store money, and the asset limit is going to become very important because one of the number one expenses is Medi-Cal and home supportive services. So if more folks are losing that, so Cal Able, I'm sure CCSM, like you know the main players, and DPSS, because I think there's some concentric circles on.
I think that the problem with DPS, or not the problem, but the challenge with DPSS is that I don't know how much they are able to target communications to people of a certain community, but it certainly is like the population that we would want to reach. So I don't know how we would necessarily do that, but I think it's maybe, I wonder if we could like find somebody who's might like oversee. That's a good thought. I'm just wondering because I think they cover such big regions. I don't know how like targeted they can get in their communications.
Yeah, I mean, maybe focus on the Rancho Park office, because that's more likely to serve our population. Or I know they used to stop by at Virginia Park once a week or something, if you guys
That's
saw
a
that
good
program.
thought. Yeah, maybe there's like folks coming to Virginia Avenue Park dealing with benefits that we could let them know about it. That's a good. And Virginia Avenue Park is definitely a big partner of ours in this project. So.
And then, of course, all the, media, social media,
Yeah.
newspaper, all the stuff.
Yeah, we're
And then-
working with our communications team to put it up on social media as well.
And I like that you have the printed option, but also someone that you can call, because some people just want to talk it out with somebody.
Yeah, we currently don't have a phone number that folks were gonna, for this program, because the concern is that if we have a phone number, everyone's gonna just call it, whereas, and it just would be hard for us to, based on the volume that we anticipate, to actually be able to follow up with people. And so we were talking about like, how could we have a phone number for people who maybe don't have a computer, aren't gonna, it's not gonna be easy for them to leave the home, maybe to go to the office hours. And we are still trying to figure that out, but I can definitely take that back and we can continue to think about it.
Or, yeah, if folks, I don't want not being able to fill out the application to be the barrier for somebody.
Yeah,
So
neither do we,
that-
yeah.
There's going to be too much demand, and you're going to have an algorithm that filters people in a certain priority, but
Yeah.
I don't want the barrier to be not filling it out, not talking to the right person so you don't know how to fill it out properly, to be the reason you get in a lower tier or whatever.
Yeah.
You get penalized for filling it out improperly. But no, thank you for being here. Commissioner Royale?
You mentioned that the program will be launched somewhere in July 2026.
Yeah.
How you will be announced that the program actually starts? So that will be through email, through newspapers, through...
Yeah, all of, not, I don't know about newspaper, but we'll be definitely, there'll be a press release, we'll be posting it on our social media, we'll be alerting our community partners, doing presentations like this to folks. So it'll be all of the above, yeah.
So, and that will be kind of like window for several days to open up those
It'll be longer than that. We haven't decided on how long we want the application window to be, but it will be more than, people will have time to submit the
And
application.
it's only Santa Monica.
Only Santa Monica, yeah, this,
How are you gonna check?
we're trying to be as clear in our marketing that this is for Santa Monica renters only. But I'm sure that some people will apply that are coming from other parts of the county. They will be required to provide documentation, not to submit the application, but in the, basically when they're contacted, if they were selected to receive services, and they would need to provide documentation that they reside in Santa Monica.
Okay, thank you.
And I just will add, like, we're trying to make the definition of renter as flexible. The LA County LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, La Casa, is they're overseeing the launch of similar programs all over the county, or I guess not overseeing, but there's money flowing to other jurisdictions. So there are going to be renter aid programs in, Los Angeles and other cities, Long Beach, and they have endorsed a more flexible definition of renter, and we're kind of using that definition as well. So people maybe who are like in an informal rental situation, where this program would be open to them as well.
Also, it was mentioned that some people probably don't have access to computer, and there's like different type of disabilities. Some people need assistance, like somebody, for example, family member, or so. How it will be incorporated to those applications if somebody will be applying on behalf of disabled persons? So how you manage all this?
I think that would be okay to have somebody else apply on someone's behalf, but then when the people concerned contacts that person, they would need to have communication with the person with disabilities in some way. Like, so if that person could be an intermediary, but it couldn't go solely through another person, and
There
unless
will be
they
some
have
sort of interview anyway.
there could be, like, you know, an intake with the family member and the person with the disability and the case manager. We see that a lot, like somebody who's kind of like an advocate, either a formal or informal advocate. And that would be fine. We're just not able to enroll someone in a program without getting their explicit consent.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank
so.
you.
Commissioner Adeyemi?
Thank you, Elena.
See you.
We work on this issues like 2 years ago.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it's been a long
so
time
now
coming.
I have the paper here from draft now to reality, right?
Yes, I know. I was like, oh, you're doing my job for me when you mentioned the program earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. It was very exhaustive, but it was done, right? So that I'm looking at the draft here that says flexible financial assistance, continuation. And household that is at income below the determined city median income threshold. And then, of course, the prioritization based on voluntary factors such as minor children, home age, and length of tenancy. So it says flexible financial assistance, flexible financial assistance data collection, potential challenges, flexible. Okay. So, okay, here I see a one-time assistance, right? Shallow assistance, long-term, lower levels of assistance, deep assistance, short-term, higher levels of assistance, up to 5,000. Is that still the case?
I would have to look on my computer to pull up the exact caps for the program, but there are guidelines around the amount of assistance for each type. But I don't have those at my fingertips, so I would have to look on my computer to get those.
And that will also include the review of 225 past due amounts for 3 days. Notices show 79% of tenants owed less than 5,000, up to 10,000. So along the same line, these are the costs that you're looking at as far as remuneration to cover this.
Yeah, we developed those caps just based on the budget and the amount of people we wanted to serve. And that's what we see in terms of the need of folks coming to the city for rental assistance or rental arrears now. So it's kind of based on what we're seeing in the community and the analysis that Fetterman Dunn did around how much people are owing. So it was based on kind of what the data showed as well.
Thank you.
Just for organizations, DCRC for sure, and actually they'll probably have a laundry list of additional places to reach out to, and then just throughout the process and once people get to the application stage or the interview stage, just making sure either both your staff and the people concerned have the ability to provide effective communication. So receiving a video relay call, an interpreter, things in a format that people can understand, just making sure everyone's prepared to provide effective communication. But yeah, just make sure you connect with DCRC and
Yeah,
get their
definitely.
feedback.
And sort of just following up on that, does the city maintain a list of, say, 100 community organizations that, this organization talks to 100 families, this has 200 families? Is that like an easily accessible, and you can do a road tour and talk to these, there's the larger ones, but I keep saying there are smaller ones out there. There are, for example, my wife's and I organization, we talk to a couple hundred families. So some of them may or may not be involved in that. So is there a list?
We don't have a list exactly like, I mean, I think, have a distribution list that we use when we are launching new programs that we try to, we're always including new agencies on. So we can include, if you know of agencies that we should be including on that, we can
Well,
definitely.
but just using the word agencies already just saying, it already cuts off groups that would not consider themselves an agency. Just by
I shouldn't,
definition.
there
No, but
are
I understand that's a normal
community
term.
groups on that
Right,
list
and-
as well, yeah.
I just think, because how do you read all of these normal communication? I'm a 30-some year marketing guy, so these normal communications are getting harder and harder. Newspaper, all these other
Yeah.
things are not working. And that would be my suggestion, is that there is a list, the permanent list. Something to put together.
Yeah, thank you. Any other recommendations or questions?
Just for another organization, maybe 211, give them the heads up. I know for LA County, a lot of people call that number, but just maybe, that's actually a relationship you guys should just be building in perpetually, but maybe just give them the heads up if you get callers from Santa Monica, maybe let them know about this program.
Good suggestion. 311, yes.
Or, yeah, 211 LA County.
Yeah, and then also 311, yes, yeah.
And sorry, what's the relationship? How do you work with the school districts on this?
I'm in the Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Division, and we also have the Human Services Division, who works more closely with the schools, but we're working with them really closely on this. So we are going to be kind of leaning on their expertise in terms of who would be the right people to connect with at the school district. But if you have recommendations of specific,
Not necessarily recommendations, but that is obvious. And also that's a hub for any 22 and younger families that have charges with disabilities. And you can, I mean, Santa Monica Heights, everyone goes through Santa Monica or Lincoln, and there's the organization there can get the word out pretty well. And you can cover a large population that way, I think.
yeah. And we've often sent things out on Peach Jar as well, which I believe is the main way to communicate things to families in the school district. But we will also let representatives that work at the school district know.
As a parent of someone with disabled who went through Santa Monica schools, are great. I don't know what Peach Jar is.
Well,
So families who have those who are moderate or severely disabled just aren't integrated to the school in the same manner and aren't aware. They don't go to the PTSA or equivalent. And I'm generalizing, but statistically speaking, I'm feeling pretty good that what I'm saying is accurate.
yeah, that's a good, thank you for sharing that. And if are there any other kind of, this isn't the right term, but like affinity groups of parents with children with disabilities that is affiliated with the school district, or?
They exist, and we can have a conversation. I'd be happy to have we've talked a couple times, happy to have a conversation and begin a closer communication with this group and the city at any point in time. You can just reach out.
Okay, great, thank you.
And wise and healthy aging, wow.
Yes.
I don't see anyone else in the queue. So I just want to say thank you for being here
Of course,
and
yeah.
following up. That means a lot. I mean, we look forward to getting an update and circling back, and
Yeah.
we're available to keep the conversation go.
And we'll definitely let you know when the program is up and running, and you can help us with the grassroots part of the promotion as well. And we're really excited to see how it goes and to report back to you at some point in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. We have 3C, discussion with Amelia Platas, information analyst, Santa Monica Rent Control Board. Thank you.
should be whatever they see fit.
Oh, however you would like to set it up, so that, is that an okay thing? Display?
Oh, no, that's fine. So this will be the same, it'll mirror up there.
Yes, on all the screens, so I don't know how you put it on slideshow.
It's not, it's not. So not with this.
Yes, but I do have a printout. You would like a printout with
No,
notes?
I have
Okay.
my printout, that's
So
fine.
this should work.
This will work, perfect. Okay, now that we've got the logistics down. Good evening, commissioners, and thank you so much for inviting rent control here. We really want to be integrated with the other city departments and other commissions. Sometimes I think we're a little bit isolated because we sort of function under our own board, not necessarily under the city council directly. So this is a really great opportunity. And I've learned a lot tonight, just, listening to all of this. And I will definitely take it back and share with my department. So again, thank you. But my name is Amelia Platas. I'm an information analyst. I work with the Public Information Department of the Rent Control Board. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and just general information on rent control, and then, answer any questions you might have. So rent control was enacted as the result of changes in the Southern California real estate boom in the 70s. There was a lot of speculation in apartments and condo conversions, and the city, much like the greater Los Angeles area, was experiencing a lot of pressures in a city with almost 80% renters at the time. It's still pretty high. I think it's still about 70% renters. There were a lot of evictions. The evictions were increasing. Demolition permits increased tremendously because, condo conversions became there was a big push for that. So in response to that crisis, residents got together and they put the rent control ordinance on the ballot. It didn't pass the first time, but in April 10th, 1979, it did pass. And so the rent control law was adopted by the city. It's an amendment to the city charter. And really what that means is that it's not simply an ordinance that can be changed by the board or certainly not by the city council, but it actually requires us to go to the voters if we want to make a change to the law itself. And the law was intended to alleviate the housing shortage. It established an autonomous rent control board. They're empowered to regulate rentals, so that rents would not be increased unreasonably. It also has provisions that allow landlords to maintain a fair return on their investments. The law itself has essentially 4 core functions. Of course, the most obvious one is that we control rents. So rent increases during a tenancy are controlled. That ensures stability and predictability for tenants. And of course, eviction protections. Landlords need to have a legal reason to evict a tenant. And another core tenet of the rent control law is to preserve rental housing stock. So we're involved in the permit review process. In fact, I'm the person primarily who reviews permits. And typically, we will not sign off on a demolition permit for a rent-controlled unit unless there are very limited instances. But again, it isn't simple to simply say, I just want to tear down this property because I want to build condos or luxury units or whatever. So that is actually a key part of the rent control law. And then, of course, we have administrative remedies in order to enforce the these different aspects of the law. So if a tenant is overcharged, they can file a complaint with our agency. We have a hearings department that will adjudicate the complaint. If owners are not maintaining their units, and, after tenants make a request for repairs, they're not addressed, tenants can also file petitions requesting rent reductions. So everything we do sort of, it revolves around controlling the rent. We're not code enforcement. We're not the health department. We can't go in and say, this unit is uninhabitable. You need to do this. But through the control of the rent, we can say, they're still paying their rent, but they're essentially getting less for their money. So we're going to lower the rent until you fix these things. So that's how we're able to assist there. And in addition, owners who feel they're not making a fair return, and there is a definition for fair return in the law, but have the ability to petition individually for rent increases. So in addition to the annual increase that's based on the CPI, roughly, owners do have other ways that, if they have high expenses, like based on capital improvements or things like that, that they can file individual petitions to address that. So, so the agency, the agency is the body that essentially carries out the work. We're led by the elected board. It's 5 commissioners that serve 4-year terms. The board hires the executive director and the general counsel, but then the rest of the staff were essentially, under the typical civil service system. We're city employees, and we have 3, I guess we really have 4 departments if you count administration, but we have the legal department, public information, which is the department that most people have contact with, and I'm part of that department. The hearings department, again, sort of adjudicates these disputes, and the legal department that advises the board primarily. And these are our current commissioners. I'm not going to go into every department, but I will speak a little bit about the public information department. Obviously, I'm biased because it's my department, but it's really the department that most people will have contact with. And we serve the public by telephone, email, and at our public counter. Although people can contact us through the city's 311 system, we actually have our own direct phone number. We have a real person that answers the phone, and we really pride ourselves in having that accessibility. In fact, we often get calls about all kinds of housing issues that we don't address simply because we're very accessible and somebody will always answer. If we're open, there'll be somebody there that you can speak with. Our emails, we have a policy of, replying to emails. We try to do it within the first 24 hours, so we're pretty good about that. There are times of the year that we get very busy in the summer, but for the most part, we're very good about replying same day or within 24 hours if we can. Our public counter, it is small and it is not ADA approved because we're in obviously historic City Hall. But I will say we are in the process of getting bids to remodel our office, and one of the reasons, and certainly one of the things that we will be addressing, is making our public counter more accessible. It isn't that somebody that we can't assist them, but it's just not ideal. We have a hallway area where, we serve all kinds of people there because our public counter space is very limited, 2 people at a time only. But so that's an area where hopefully we'll see some improvements in the next year. But our counter hours are the same as our phone hours, so we are very accessible in that regard. You can always get a real person to talk to. And we produce website content. I share the same feelings about our website, but I will not get into that here. It's beautiful, but it's hard for people to navigate, and it's unfortunate. We produce 2 to 3 newsletters a year, and traditionally, we mail them out. They're also posted on our website. We have multiple information sheets that, again, we have links to on our website, but we have physical copies outside our office. We can mail them to people. We can email them. We do seminars. So we go out into the community and we do several seminars a year. Our seminars are recorded, so if you can't attend in person, you can usually view them. We put up the PowerPoint presentations on our website, so you're able to view those. And then, of course, we have the internal kind of bureaucratic work that we do, but including things like the permit processing, and not processing, but permit reviews, and we monitor evictions. We don't provide legal service, but we track some of these things and we give out information and referrals to members of the public. So there's about 27,000, give or take, units that are subject to rent control. So not every unit in the city is controlled. It's basically most of the residential rental units that were constructed prior to April 10th, 1979. So that's when the law was enacted. So basically, most buildings that received their certificate of occupancy prior to that date will be subject to rent control. There's a few exceptions. Sometimes there are properties where we've granted removal permits, so they've been redeveloped and they have some rent control units, but for the most part, anything built after that date will not be subject to rent control. There's a few other exceptions. Most single-family homes are also not controlled, but that's generally, there's the majority of residential units in the city actually are under rent control. So rent control is not a needs-based program, unlike many other housing programs. In the beginning, when the law was first enacted, the rent was tied to the actual unit. Didn't matter who moved in. It wasn't tied to the tenancy. So when the law was enacted in 1979, owners were required to register their properties, and they had to provide the rents that they were charging for each unit on April 10th, 1978, which was a year prior to the law being enacted, and presumably that was the free market. So we took those rents, those became the base rents, and then annual increases were added, and they continue to be added every year. But in the mid-90s, there was a change at the state level. So the state Costa-Hawkins law was enacted, and that law imposed what's known as vacancy decontrol. So prior to that time, it didn't matter if somebody moved out of their unit, the rent was still the rent. It was tied to the unit itself. After vacancy decontrol came in, we now decontrol the rents when there's a voluntary vacancy, and then it gets recontrolled when a new tenant moves in. So, but throughout the duration of the tenancy, the rent is controlled. And it's basically, the owner sets a market rent that the tenant agrees to, they register it with us, and then from there on, it's just the annual increase that the board approves each year, which the annual increase. And it's a relatively straightforward formula. We take 75% of the change in the CPI for a 12-month period from April through March of the prior year. It cannot exceed 3%. That's what it's capped at. There's some minor surcharges that sometimes can be added to the rent, but for the most part, that's really all, that's what makes up the rent. And of course, there's eviction protections, which are very significant. We don't provide eviction defense or legal services to tenants or landlords, but we do provide information on the just causes for eviction. I think Santa Monica's law has one of the most robust eviction protections. So that is a very key part of the charter amendment. This is just a little slide about the impact of the Costa-Hawkins law, which is that law that I spoke about that was enacted in 1995. It went into effect in 1999. But you can see here, this is from our annual report, but basically we're showing the trajectory of rents from 1999, when Costa-Hawkins went into effect, until I think this goes back to 2024, 25. But you can see how median rents have increased. And that's really because every time somebody moves out, the rent goes to market. So while we certainly do provide that stability to tenants who are in place, which is still very valuable, with time, rents continue to rise. And so, that's just something that we have to deal with because it's a state law. Another state law that impacts rent control, perhaps less so, it's the Ellis Act, which is essentially a state law that allows owners to go out of the residential rental business. And that was enacted in the mid-'80s, but it basically allows owners to evict their tenants and just remove their units from the rental housing market. It's, I think, recently, while we still have these Ellis Act withdrawals, there's been some stability because at the same time that the state has been requiring additional housing, they have put in more restrictions on what can be done with the property when it's withdrawn. So it'll be interesting to see going forward, because these are recent changes, how much of an impact it has on these Ellis Act withdrawals. But these can be, quite devastating. You have a whole building where, all the tenants get evicted, and if the owner follows the procedures, there's really no defense for it. And, that is something else that impacts, obviously, housing and affordability. And that's really it. Just wrapping it up, rent control is just, one part in multiple solutions for, keeping residents housed and maintaining housing affordability and stability. It's good for the community because regulated rents help retain the city's diverse population, and it fosters a more inclusive community. It allows tenants to plan their finances, avoid displacement, and stay in place. It builds community. People put down roots when they're not, forced to leave because they can't afford, to stay in place. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We've been trying to connect with you for a minute. So glad to kick this off, and we'll definitely want to have you back in the future. I'm sure you guys come up from the community quite a bit. And just to verify that you were talking about, you have that phone number that people can call. That's the best one.
That's it right there.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. The community definitely wants to know that. I'll post that again. And then just a question I often get is just, and maybe you have a existing informational sheet on this, but what's a reasonable expectation as a renter of maintenance? Like how often the carpet's replaced, how often painted, if you have water damage to mold, how can it get fixed if my water heater blows up? Like this is what I hear a lot, and then I get these anecdotes of every 5 years, every 10 years,
none of that.
But I know there's an answer, so can you help me find that answer?
The answer is that it is just based on the condition. There is no fixed period of time. I think there may be some cities that have something like that, but Santa Monica's rent control law does not. It basically, it's a reduction in services, removal of amenities that would allow a tenant to petition for a rent reduction. So the process is that they need to make a written request to their owner. It can be an email, it can be a letter hand delivered or put in the mail. But essentially, if their carpet is deteriorated, if the paint is peeling, it doesn't really have to be in horrible condition. It's just if it's threadbare because it's so old that you can no longer clean it, your cabinets aren't closing, the drawers are, those are things that, should be fixed. So our standard is, I don't know if lower is the right word, it's not habitability. we can help a tenant address things that wouldn't rise to the level of, no hot water or, asbestos or mold that makes a unit uninhabitable. But these other sort of, expectations that you're paying rent, the landlord should maintain the property. So, we're not going to give you a rent reduction because you don't like the color of the paint, but if the apartment hasn't been painted in 25 years, chances are you probably can make a pretty good case that it needs to be painted. So there isn't a fixed period of time. We have a form that we provide that's a checklist with all kinds of maintenance issues that a tenant can they check off, sign it, and send it or give it to their landlord. Keep a copy, they wait 30 days, and if the landlord hasn't responded, and the form tells, it's called, notice to landlord, intent to submit petition for rent decrease. So pretty, very bureaucratic sounding, but it lets the landlord know, I'm serious about this, fix my issues, or I'm going to go to the rent control board. So tenants don't have to use that, but we think it's a good idea because it also makes it very simple. We have a whole list of items here that they can check off. And after 30 days, they make an appointment with us to file the petition. And as long as they've listed it in their notice to the owner, then they can include it in the petition. We schedule it for mediation, and we have a pretty good success rate with mediation. About 50% of the cases get settled in mediation. We have a mediator. The mediations are done virtually. We can accommodate somebody who needs to come in person, but most people are happy to be able to do it virtually, or it can even be done by phone if you don't have a computer. And the mediator works with the tenant and the owner or the property manager and tries to get issues resolved. And if mediation is not successful, then we schedule it for a hearing, which is a bit more formal. It's an administrative hearing, and at that point, it's possible the tenant would get a rent reduction until the issue is addressed. And we do that with things like having your parking taken away too. So that unfortunately is happening a lot with the building of ADUs. While on the one hand, we're creating more housing, it is really having an impact on tenants who, and especially with, I can see that for seniors or tenants with disabilities who need their transportation, or, that's one of the calls that we get a lot, is somebody who, they need that accessibility to their car or whatever. And unfortunately, because it's a state law that's mandating that we ministerially approve these additional units, the city can't say, well, no, you can't do it because you're taking away this person's parking, So in a case like that, we tend to refer to the city attorney's office for an accommodation of some kind, because maybe they're replacing some of the parking, but they want to give it to the new renters who are going to pay more. But, perhaps they can, if they need it as an accommodation, that would be one way that they might be able to get it. So.
And I have a couple of folks in the queue, Adiemi, Rockfell, Royal. Adiemi?
Thank you for coming to the commission.
Of course.
Hypothetically, and I know that that's not something we should.
Oh, we don't like hypotheticals.
But say, for instance, a tenant doesn't know his rights for years, that he or she has had peeling paints for asbestos, for mold. That went on for a few years, and then discover that these are the rights a tenant should have to have them fixed. Can the tenant come to your rent control board to say, I did not know my right, but now I discover I have lived under this condition for 5 or more years? Can you go back retroactively to decrease the rent?
No, unfortunately, we can't, because it's really the way the law is written, and so we're limited to the authority that's given to us under the law. So it's just, in fact, we have to see the condition. We have an inspector that goes out to verify that these conditions exist. So we have situations where a tenant put the money into the property themselves, and we can't assist with that because, well, the condition no longer exists. So it's kind of unfortunate. You know, we send out regular newsletters to every controlled unit. We do them at least twice a year. Typically, it's in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall. This year, we're not doing the summer one. We're doing a postcard because the summer one is mostly about the rent increase. But, you know, we do those twice a year, and so there's a lot of information we send there. But obviously, people still. When there's a new tenant that moves in, owners have to register the new tenancy. We send out a letter to the tenant welcoming them, and there's an information sheet that gives them a summary of their rights that they also receive. So, you know, that's not something we've always done. That started in 2017, but, you know, we've been doing it for almost 10 years now. So I think we are trying to get better, and we conduct seminars. We have bilingual staff. I'm bilingual. I conduct tenant seminars at Virginia Park every year in Spanish. It's kind of a long answer to your question, which is really no. Unfortunately, we can't give retroactive rent decreases, but we do make an effort to get the information out there so tenants know their rights.
Okay. Here's one question that is not hypothetical. This is real.
Okay.
Okay, so a tenant lived in a place, in a unit for a few years, and then moved to another unit, but wasn't given the information as a new, considered a new tenant. What is the recourse for not being informed that you're a new tenant or you are not a new tenant to this new place?
So the penalty for an owner who doesn't register a new tenancy is that they can't increase the rent. So if they have increased that tenant's rent, the tenant could file a complaint and get back maybe some of the money they've paid in terms of excess rent. Owners have to certify when they register the new tenancy, they actually have to certify that they gave the tenant a copy of it's called the rent control information sheet. And they have to sign under penalty of perjury that they gave it to the tenant. And if they don't, we block all the increases and we send them a letter and we say, you didn't give this to the tenant, give it to the tenant. But in addition, when owners do register their tenancies, we also send information to the tenants. So I don't know, again, there's really no remedy to retroactively address that. But we do have more proactive ways to try to prevent it from happening.
Thank you.
Two things. One is a little backstory, and then a specific question as it relates to group homes and disability. Today, there's a number of subjects that are very near and dear to my heart. I actually take a different approach. In 2013, we moved to Santa Monica. My wife and I bought a house. As you're aware, we have a son with disability. We found a house that had a back. It really functions as a single family. It's a large front house, and it was a grandfathered duplex garage that had been converted. And we chose it because of that, because if we had caregivers stay over or anything like that, we could do it. Had to prove that I wasn't renting it. And that was the most humiliating experience I've had with a governmental organization in my life. I was proven guilty. I had to prove myself innocent. I had people come in, take photos that it was empty. I had to submit bills, and I was questioned, why is my name on a bill and not my wife's name? And I just want to say that there are two sides of it. It's not just a tenant, the rent, it's just a single family house, but someone who owns a building is not a bad person. And in this case, I was treated very poorly, just trying to say, I'm using it for family or caregivers. We don't rent it out. And I just this week sent in my every 2-year little form I have to send in. So
It's an exemption because you own a duplex. That's what it.
Right, but it functions as a single and all this, and it's been grandfathered and all.
Yeah.
And so earlier I mentioned about wanting potentially to make a group home. The other reason I won't want to do this, because I have no idea how rent control would affect my main residence in doing that. I thought about it, and I'm like, well, no, I'm not even based upon my experience, I'm not even going to do it trying to deal with rent control. So there are, my overall thing is be flexible, understand everybody's situation's different, and treat not just tenants, but others with compassion as you go through this process.
Of course. And I, I am sorry you had that experience. We do verify when somebody applies for an exemption that they live on the property. I'm assuming that's what this was. Again, I'm sorry for the experience that you had. I can tell you that if you are a licensed home, then it would be exempt from rent control. It's not a permanent exemption, but if you're licensed by the state, those properties are exempt, at least while they're being licensed and while they're being used that way.
Right. I think that going back to my previous subject, if you have a cooperative of parents who want their 20-year-old to live together, the last thing that we want to do is create a group house and get it licensed by the state. We just want to work together, support our kids, create a community and opportunity for friendships. And both of these restrict that from happening.
If you have the kind of exemption that I believe you have, which is for properties that are 2 or 3 units, once you have that exemption, to maintain it, what you need to do is continue to live on the property as your primary residence. And you do have to hold title as a natural person. We don't grant those exemptions to corporations and so on. It's really meant for small property owners. But we don't regulate what you do with the property if you have that exemption, because you're exempt. The only thing we limit is we won't let you demolish it, but beyond that.
Right, but in that case, okay, it is a large, it was a garage that got converted into something years and years ago. So it's really not a multifamily, even though it can be, it's grandfathered, zoned, all these other things. Right, but I'm not going to live in a house when, I'm going to have 3 people living there with disabilities. The idea is that I would have it run and I wouldn't live there because that would drive me to the edge. So, again, there are barriers to doing something good, and this is one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rao.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Nice to meet you. So my questions will be related to apartment buildings.
Okay.
So first of all, I would like to know, are landlords required to disclose information about units? Are they like rent control or not before they sign a lease with tenants?
So our only requirement, and there are other requirements that are outside our scope, but the only requirement that we have is that they give the tenant a copy of this rent control information sheet when they move in. It doesn't specify that it has to be before, but certainly once they sign the lease, they need to give them that information. Now, we have a public database of where somebody can look up a rent, an address, and you can usually tell if it's under rent control, if it's there. But all somebody has to do is call us, and find out. We can tell them by the address if it's under rent control or not. And we're it's easy to do. But no, as far as our requirement, they don't have to disclose it beforehand. It's just once the tenant signs the lease or moves in, or at the time of lease signing, they do need to give this paper to them to tell them what their rights are and that they are protected under rent control.
So another question is, for example, there was like old property with 5 units, and then it was redevelopment on the property, and it's added like 20 more units, for example. It's just like hypothetically. So, and after a while, tenants start having issue with common area, for example, elevator doesn't work. My best understanding that not every unit can call you and say like, hey, we have issue here. It's like the most units of that building
Yes.
cannot actually address that issue of maintenance or anything.
You're
So-
probably right. Based on what you're describing, that sounds like the kind of situation that, assuming there were 5 rent-controlled units there to begin with, they might have, I don't know if this is what happened, but this is certainly a possibility. It does happen. If an owner wants to redevelop their property, add more density, build more units, they can apply for what we call a removal permit. There'll be a contract they have to sign with the board. They have to replace the rent-controlled units they're tearing down, and at least 15% of the replacement units, which could just be 1 unit if it's just a few units, they have to be deed restricted to low-income tenants. Beyond that, whatever they build that's new is not subject to rent control. And part of that is because of state law. The Costa-Hawkins law does not allow us to expand our control beyond the original 1979 date. So properties like that that are redeveloped, there might have a few replacement units that would be subject to rent control, but the rest of the building wouldn't be. So you're correct, that does happen sometimes.
So basically, if, for example, the building in general had several issues, and all tenants, for example, dealing with mold or air filters like not replaced, or elevator doesn't work, the people who only occupy those rent control units can address that issue to
With us, right.
So
Now-
all other where they should kind of
Well, anybody, rent controlled or not, if the issues are more structural in nature, the city's code enforcement division can be contacted.
Okay.
So, and they, they do a lot. Code officers, we refer people to them a lot, and I always feel bad when I do, because they're tasked with, so many things throughout the city, including, when there's construction and, they have to go out and investigate to make sure there's permits or, things that are happening. But code enforcement can come out and address certain issues, like if there's no hot water, that could make a unit uninhabitable. If, there's one bathroom and the toilet doesn't work, that makes the unit uninhabitable. And they can make those determinations, and they can order that the tenants be relocated temporarily. And that doesn't just apply to rent control properties. That would be any property. So certain things, there would be a remedy for. Same thing with mold. Typically, that's the county health department that you would contact, but mold is very tricky. If it's not visible, most agencies will say you need to get a mold inspector. I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed, I think, at the state level, where they need to pass regulations to, really address that. It's difficult because mold is everywhere, but so there are other agencies that somebody could contact, but only, if you're under rent control, can you use our remedy.
So next question about temporary and permanent relocation. If a tenant residing in a rent control unit and something happened and the landlord need to relocate that person, so do they supposed to offer another rent control unit or any units available for permanent and temporary?
So
There is
again, that's not actually part of the rent control law. It's a separate city ordinance. Code enforcement addresses temporary relocation. The city attorney's office can assist with permanent relocation. The way, we do answer general questions about it because, for example, permanent relocation is offered in a situation where a tenant is essentially being evicted through no fault of their own. And there's really very few instances where that is legal. So there are, for example, an owner can evict a tenant under some circumstances to move into a unit, but they have to pay them that permanent relocation fee. So that would be one situation.
And they're avoiding that.
Well,
They like
I mean, I don't know. That's, If somebody has trouble with that or has questions about that, they should contact the city attorney's office, because it's really a separate part of a city, with city law. Same thing with the temporary relocation. And I think the reason code enforcement is tasked with that is because typically they have to make a determination that the unit is not habitable. So it could be the code enforcement, it could be the health department. I suppose it could probably be the fire department too, depending on, it's not us. We don't have that kind of ability to make that determination, so we don't enforce that. But certainly we let tenants and property owners know the what the law says and who to contact for more details. So typically with temporary relocation, my understanding is that depending on the length of the time, if it's just a few days, the owner can choose to put them up in a hotel somewhere or provide them with a comparable unit. But I'm not an expert on that, so sometimes,
Yeah, I think they have to provide some sort of like.
I know it has to be
vouchers
comparable, and there's
hotel.
a fixed amount. It gets adjusted every July based on, inflation essentially, but it's a fixed amount per diem for the housing. Then there's a fixed amount for meals per person.
Yep.
I think there's a fixed amount if they have like a cat or a dog for boarding. And the meals, for example, I've heard of situations where it's just the kitchen that's not operable. So the tenant can choose to stay in the unit, and then they only get the meal part of the relocation. So there's some flexibility there. But again, that's really all code enforcement.
Okay. Thank you.
Rockfelt and then Ayemi.
So how do the ADUs fit into this world right now? You have a pre-79 house, they had a garage, they get permission to make an ADU in the back technically, and are they allowed to rent that at all?
Oh, sure. I mean, they can rent it if it's built with permits and all of that. If it's converted from an existing structure that existed in 1979, it would be subject to rent control. But if it's built from the ground up, then no,
Well,
it would be new construction.
I think most are converting an existing garage, so I always was wondering, you would think that would then be subject to rent control.
It is, it would be.
So are you finding additional units joining the list of the 29,000?
We are. And there's both. Some properties, I reviewed a permit today where it's a 7-unit property that's going to become a 12-unit property. It's just a lot, but the parking is gone. That's going to become units, and then there's like a new building, where the courtyard was. So we see both.
Ayemi?
Okay, so the code enforcement came out, made an inspection, determined that it was mold, and ordered the landlord to fix it. And then the landlord wouldn't fix the mold. And then had to come back a second time, a third time. What is the recourse for such a tenant?
I mean, that's a question for code enforcement, but my understanding is that code enforcement, if they can assess fines, penalties if the owner does not comply. And after and I think they give them a lot of leeway before they do this, but eventually if they don't comply, they can refer it to the city attorney's office for prosecution. But a tenant can also file the rent decrease petition. They're not mutually exclusive. If the condition exists, call code enforcement, that puts pressure on the owner to do something. And at the same time, they could file the petition with us. In our process, it's not meant to be for things that need emergency repairs. And the tenant has to give the owner an opportunity to make the repair. So the tenant can't file for at least 30 days. It's not meant to be like right away, we're going to get on top of you. But, it's reasonable to expect things be addressed within 30 days.
And is there a statute of limitation to filing for such a?
There isn't. It's just that the condition needs to exist. And you have to have given the owner a request and given them at least 30 days to address the issues. If your request is more than 6 months old, then we say you have to give a new one. So it's not a statute of limitations. You just can't wait a year and then file. No.
Did you press it accidentally? No, thank you for being generous with your time and bringing your expertise. Just, I do want to do another plug, full disclosure. Like a few years ago, there was an opening for a few months, and I put my name in for the board, but I had a specific, I was like, I'll come in there 2 months, make your space more digitally accessible. I'll run a scanner, I'll fix the accessibility issues I just know I can fix like that, and I'll send the new board in a better direction. So I'd like to plug that again. There's an opportunity to just, you have some good people on the city PIO, but this should be like a unified effort to just, one way to think about it is it's necessary for some, but it makes it better for everybody.
Sure.
So I would just, again, give a plug to make sure your website, if it's accessible, things are going to be easier to find, easier to navigate, easier for people with disabilities to find. But just we look forward to you coming back and just appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I don't see anyone else, so just thank you again.
Okay.
Have you designed a new park in the last 2.5 hours or what?
Thank you. Okay, just start. I could just start right. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Tony Lopez. I'm the city's senior park planner. Just here to mostly give you an introduction to the next plan I'm going to be working on, but also update you on some things that have occurred since the last time I was here. So on January 27th of this year, the City Council adopted the Parks and Recreation Vision Plan. This is something I brought to the Commission in summer of 2025 to understand, well, to review the rough draft that had been put together, but also solicit some feedback on how to improve the plan even further. I wanted to thank you for the comments that were received. You know, in establishing that rough draft, we tried our best to fold in accessibility within the recommendations. But, you know, the comments that were received, we took to heart. I took those comments back and worked with Blake, and there was some coordination between myself, Tom, and Chair and Vice Chair on kind of how we can improve that. And coming out of that process, and I hope you've had a chance to review the plan that's now on the city's website, but one of the comments that really resonated was looking at accessibility and the design of our parks and open spaces, the improvements that go into them through the lens of accessibility. So rather than fold those recommendations into various goals, we moved it to its own action, so that everything that we look at in terms of our parks and open spaces are on the front end of the recommendations. So it's through environment, it's through equity, and it's through accessibility. So those are part of the first three actions as you look into the plan, so that they're always front and center before we even start to put pen to paper. What you're seeing on the screen here, I can read them quickly for you. These are the primary goals, primary recommendations within Action 1.3. Action 1.3 within the Parks and Rec Vision Plan reads, continue to enhance accessibility to and through the park network. Those primary recommendations include retrofit existing parks for increased accessibility and design new parks to be universally inclusive, expanding inclusive outreach strategies to all age and ability demographics, maintain smooth, safe paths and include accessible trail options, study the integration of ADA compliant stalls, sinks, and gender neutral options at all parks and facilities, prioritize accessible parking and continuous accessible pathways to and through parks and open spaces, study the feasibility to adapt facilities and offer inclusive programming, ensure clarity with tactile, braille, and digital options, and support a culture of accessibility and continuous opportunities for feedback. These are the high-level recommendations that are within the front end of the plan. I will say continued coordination with Blake Stavros, our ADA coordinator, and the members of the commission further helped us in strategizing the design guideline recommendations that went into another recommendation within the Parks and Rec plan, which is the landscape vision plan, which has morphed into what is called the Public Landscape Performance and Maintenance Standards and Design Guidelines, a longer name. But ultimately, this design guideline is an administrative tool that staff can then use when coordinating with consultants on future projects. This guideline looks at more concrete, actionable recommendations that can be folded into projects. Some of the priorities that were outlined in this design guideline, this document is also complete in its final draft. It's an administrative tool, so not necessarily out there for the public. This is just to help the staff coordinate more collaboratively. But this is being reviewed internally with public works staff next week. Some of those priorities include playgrounds, trails and nature paths, restrooms and facilities, parking and routes, sports and recreation areas, signage and communication, and training and engagement. I wanted to point to, these are just some examples within those priorities. Those priorities expand much more. For playgrounds, use firm, stable surfacing like poured-in-place resilient surfacing. Under trails and nature paths, ensure at least one fully accessible trail experience per park. For restrooms and facilities, provide accessible sinks and lever-operated faucets. Parking and routes, maintain smooth, slip-resistant parking surfaces. For sports and recreation areas, provide accessible seating for players and spectators. Signage and communication, add QR codes on signs linking to audio descriptions or ASL videos. And for training and engagement, train maintenance staff to identify and fix accessibility barriers. So what I'm here today to do is introduce the next plan. We are now beginning the Beach and Pier Vision Plan. We anticipate this process being about a 2-year process. This today is merely an introduction to get initial thoughts and feedback. Very similar, but a little bit more on the front end than the Parks Plan was. We are championing resiliency, accessibility, equity, inventory and governance and history, and recommendations for the future planning, funding, and maintenance at the beach and the pier, with an emphasis on the plan being in support of adopted policies, including the Parks and Rec Vision Plan, the Sustainable City Plan, CAP, etc. So in the initial outreach that I've conducted thus far, it's been mostly with internal staff. And because this is the first of what I anticipate to be several back and forths with the commission, is these 3 questions here. These are the 3 questions that I've asked the various divisions and departments I've met with over the last couple of months thus far. And the intent of these questions was just to get your ideas flowing. You know, this being the very first meeting, we have not drafted any recommendations or goals as of yet. We are trying to figure out what are the priorities from staff and boards and commissions to help inform the future public outreach, like surveys, pop-up events, etc., so that we can all start to be in alignment on what our overall goals and recommendations will be for the beach and the pier as we plan its future. I will read these questions out loud, and the hope would be that tonight we get some just initial thoughts. I want to emphasize as well that I have an open email policy, so feel free to shoot me emails of like, you know what, I was thinking about this idea when I was at the beach today. I wanted to share it with you, and that's something I really take to heart and like to kind of fold into my process. So the 3 questions that have been asked are, in your experience with the beach and pier, are there any lessons learned that might inspire recommendations for the future? What opportunities might exist to improve the beach and pier experience for visitors, tenants, and staff? And what are some blue sky ideas when considering the future of the beach and pier? Those are ideas that could be anything, because we don't know, we can't predict the future, but if we have just an idea that's just been kind of mulling over in our heads as just beach and pier goers, of what it can be, those are what I would define as blue sky ideas. So with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I would just be enthusiastic to hear what you have to say.
No, thank you. And again, I like you come, you follow up, you integrated some of our feedback, and most importantly, you move left in the planning as early as possible. We're glad we're hearing about some coming up. That's exactly move left. So we're off to a good start with this, that we're at the beginning of this process. So just from a process perspective, and I really like on that action 1.3, that bullet around support a culture of accessibility, continuous opportunities for feedback. That's right on point. Yeah, there's just a lot I like about this process we're going through, just from a process perspective. I think that's a gap of engaging us early. We ask questions, you respond, you come back and give updates. Like, so that's good. But just for one of your questions, the inspirations, an event I went to that was really powerful was the Life Rolls On event. It's for adaptive surfing. People of all abilities they had these adaptive surfboards, people with wheelchair, who use wheelchairs, people who have all sorts of disabilities, who had been told that they can never surf, were surfing and having like a powerful experience. So just check out their website. It was an event here, and that could be some inspiration. Not just like practical ideas of how to use the space or potential ideas, but just that the difference between what people thought they could do and what they could do, that delta is big. So there's a lot of people, yeah, so that might be a good source of inspiration, is look at the Life Rolls On event that happened at Santa Monica. And then I'll pass it to Rockfeld, Royale, then Cosme Dodge.
Again, thank you. You did incorporate our changes, and that was great. What constitutes the beach? What do you have control of? I know that's county park. Are you talking the green space up to the strand, or what?
So what we're currently looking at is essentially the 245 acres that constitute the beach and pier zone. So that includes everything from the most simplest way to look at it is from the bike path west, including the parking lots. So like the beach parks that are there now will be considered, but those parks were rolled into the Parks and Recreation Vision Plan. This is more closely looking at the beach itself and the sand.
How do you coordinate? Because that's county, technically, right? The beach.
So the state owns the beach, but we as the city operate and maintain it. Currently, from what I recall in my conversations, the county used to maintain the beach bike path, but now we do that. And they do there's some coordination with the county and the city that have to do with the storm drains that are at the beach, but that's about it. And I know there's conversations about the lifeguard and the county stuff going on right now, but for the most part, we operate and maintain the beach.
Look, I'm sure there'll be a lot of ideas, and what I'm going to say is pretty straightforward. But you know, my family and my wife's family loves to go to the beach all over the world. And whenever I hear about going to the beach, it's the last place I want to go, because my son's in a wheelchair. A lot of lifting, a lot of moving, a lot of carrying. It's very tiring. We do it. We travel with him everywhere. So the first and foremost is making as much of the beach accessible as possible. And that's just the common sense. These boardwalks going out are amazing. Maybe they can go a little north and south. I mean, a little bit, BT. I have no idea. But if I can get access as a caregiver to my son going out there, that's amazing. There are 100 ideas. And with the pier, I'm not in a chair myself, but when I think about my son going to the pier, I'm like, God, I hope my wheelchair can withstand all the bumps. It doesn't get a flat tire. I know there's one area where you can kind of go in there, but most of it is just like this. And I want to, so standard things that come to mind from my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So what opportunities might exist to improve the beach and pier experience for visitors, tenants, and staff? I don't know about visitors and staff, but based on people's concern, it will be nice if somehow we can cancel that parking fee for disabled Santa Monica residents. at the beach. So we already spoke about this. We, as a commission, I believe, never approved it. So it was established by city. So, and now I'm hearing from disabled people that they kind of like confuse that they have to pay those fees to access the beach, which is like incorporated and a part of the city. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add, Tony, you're aware of what the logic was to increase what the city was saying and the consultants were?
Yes.
To cut down abuse.
Yes.
And then we cut accessibility. It's a completely wrong way to go about it.
I just wanted to put in a real plug for more wheelchairs on the beach. And the one wheelchair we now have, I can't really even use because I can't sit like that. It's
I see.
not, this is a tilt recline that goes up and down. I know they have wonderful wheelchairs that I can sit in because I was there testing them 5-6 years ago for the city to pick them out. And after that, after the pandemic, they just picked the cheapest one. It doesn't do anything, and I can't even use it really. I can manage to get to the beach, but after that, it pinches my spine so much I have to leave it. So it's like worthless for me, even though it's the only one we have left. And I'm sure there could be all those where they rent them out, where they rent out things that could have all kinds of wheelchairs available all the way up the coast. They did. They had it before. We could rent them up at the big pool up there.
Annenberg?
Yeah, the pool. We rented them up there. They rented them. So that's just my plug along with all the things for the beach. We've got this magnificent beach, but disabled people can't even take a wheel on it because the wheelchairs are, I mean, you have to be able to sit in a wheelchair like that, and that's it. So
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for the almost 8 years is increasing the number. I think there were 3, now there's 1 functional one, and just marketing it. So having more of them and letting the public know how to access them clearly would be kind of a lower hanging fruit, hopefully, and putting them strategically so folks can use them with their families. And to your blue sky ideas, I mean, we're in Silicon Valley. There's going to be more accessible technologies to navigate the beach. So just, are we incorporating those as they come out over time? You know, thinking 5 years, 10 years down the road. I see some stuff like, because I'm into assistive technologies, but not just wheelchairs, things that'll help people get in the water, navigate the bike paths, just being open to that. And specifically, I want to circle back is we had some of our providers, like of our scooters, and I've been invited to go on the scooters. I can't use them because the things are on this side, and like there's adaptable options. So like, yeah, can we get adaptable options for our scooters, for our bikes and things, like to use the bike path? So I think those are my pie in the sky is as stuff comes out that make us be open to those and how we integrate in the city moving forward. But in the short term, we need more wheelchairs. I think there might even be, this isn't my expertise, but low-cost options to make pavement more accessible to beaches. Like
I've been
something you
talking
can
with Blake
put
about that.
down as a temporarily fix to make it, you know, reduce some of that. Yeah, those are just some thoughts.
When it comes to the wheelchairs right now, it's that tracked wheelchair that we're talking about, right? Is that, I think that's the one, the motorized tracked one that everyone refers to. Does Santa Monica own other beach wheelchairs that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm
We
intrigued.
don't
by this
have to
conversation
go
for
for
sure.
the most expensive option out there. You can have a couple of the expense, but not everyone wants, it's like, because then you can only get 3 because they're not cheap.
Yeah.
It's a balance of needs, and I think you can actually serve more people Like, it just, again, I keep using my son, but that's today. I push him. He doesn't need a tract, but it'd be great balloon tires, and something else I could do would be fantastic. And it's a quarter the price of those tracks.
We should have a menu of them. I don't know if like not just the super expensive one, a couple more practical ones, and maybe someone who's using their own chair to add on to that. Like maybe there's an assistive device where you can leverage your existing one, but make it function better. Like we need all the menu. I think we only have one option. It's the super expensive one. There's only one.
I don't like to spend taxpayer money or recommend doing it if there's other solutions. We got to just be smart.
But we do, that is something that's come up for years, is more people who use wheelchairs want to get on the beach, and that's been a challenge, and there's only one wheelchair, and we've made maps on where they are, and there were 3 and now there's 1 and we don't know where it is. And just, I think that's a win right there, is increasing the number, the types of devices where people can use wheelchairs on the beach better than they are right now.
Thank you. Mhm.
I don't see any questions. So I just want to thank you again let's keep this process up where we're here early and we iterate and we keep in communication a lot. And we look forward to being a part of the conversation about this beach and pier vision. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for waiting.
Not a problem.
I'm just going to fly through this because, again, we're being creative. So just 3, I just want to highlight we have 2 seats opening, and the application is going to come out, and the deadline to apply is the 26th. And again, we'll have 9 seats moving forward. I shared some resources which I talked about. I'm on E1 was the application for the commission. I'm now on E2. I shared some resources about the policy updates related to CalFresh, Medicaid, the changes potentially to the governor's budget, which we'll know on the 15th. So I'll have an update at next meeting. And then the Behavioral Health Service Act goes into play July 1st. So I want to have the latest updates on that. E3, AI updates at the federal and state level. There are some big announcements. Just want everyone to know the latest policies. And man, these are good digital accessibility resources. A follow-up, we had Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and I said I'd bring some cool stuff that stood out to me. So stuff on making better documents, stuff coming out from Microsoft and Apple and Google, and then a resource about some of the concerns the community has brought up to me about overlays. And then finally, 5 is just a great resource. I think it's out of NYU and experts around making healthcare more accessible, a free guide that if you had to hire a consultant to make would be very expensive, just free resources out here that would be very expensive. So I hope the city takes a look at those. I'm just going to skip 5. It's old minutes because we can't approve it. Take a look at 9A. So the first city council meeting, we're going to have the Disability Month proclamation. So we can't rule on it. It's basically last year's, but I just added the word artificial intelligence to things that affect us. But it's basically the last year's, and change the name of the mayor and the date. But I guess we'll have to approve it on the 8th. And then I think the first meeting is July 14th, where we'll have the proclamation and hopefully, same like last year, and maybe say a few words. All the ad hocs, reports. Most of the folks aren't here. I'll just we're having our annual, I'm on 13AI about ad hocs, the annual public hearing. It's going to be during our October regular month. We'll have, if you are part of the LIFT program, what's the name of it? Mode program, thank you. I think they're going to have access to that if you want to get a ride here. And there's going to be some advertising of it, so that's exciting. Thanks, Tom, for hard work, and I'm excited. We have a few months to get prepped, and I'm hoping next month to just give something about our annual plan and what's pending, just so we can start to narrow down what we want to talk about. So I'll try and get some prepared. I'm going to skip 2. 3, any updates on 3, the website? Yeah. I'm going to skip 4 and 5. For agenda planning, we'll cover a lot of the stuff we couldn't rule on today, because there's a few things we need to move on, and I just want to have something, just an item related to like our annual plan, probably just use our last year as a template, what we didn't address, and then get your feedback on how to make it better so we can talk about it during October. And then there'll also be elections of chair and co-chair, because we do that every July. I think we have to adjourn because we can't do any of this stuff. Yeah, so I apologize, community, but thank you.